The security camera footage was crystal clear, Karen Martinez stepping over the fence into David Chen's backyard pool at 3:47 a.m., her entitled smirk gleaming in the moonlight. What she didn't know was that Humphrey, David's 800-pound rescue camel, had escaped his pen and was about to turn her midnight swim into a territorial showdown that would expose 20 years of neighborhood secrets, destroy 3 marriages, and leave Karen facing federal charges she never saw coming. David Chen jolted awake to the sound of splashing water. The digital clock on his nightstand glowed 3:47 a.m. in angry red numbers. He'd been dreaming about his late wife Sarah again, the same dream where she was teaching their daughter Emma to swim in the backyard pool they'd built together 15 years ago. But Emma was 23 now, living in Seattle, and Sarah had been gone for 3 years. The splashing continued. David grabbed his phone and the baseball bat he kept beside his bed, muscle memory from his years as a Chicago cop kicking in. He crept to the bedroom window overlooking the backyard, keeping low as he peered through the blinds. Someone was in his pool. The motion sensor lights had activated, casting harsh white light across the water. A woman with bleached blonde hair was doing lazy backstroke laps, completely naked, as if she owned the place. David's jaw clenched as he recognized her, Karen Martinez, the self-appointed neighborhood watch commander who lived 3 houses down. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, reaching for his phone to call the police. Then he remembered his current relationship with the local department wasn't exactly friendly, not since he'd filed complaints about their handling of Sarah's accident investigation. Karen climbed out of the pool, water streaming from her pale body as she walked to the patio table where she'd apparently set up a small feast: wine, cheese, crackers. She popped a grape into her mouth and smiled at something on her phone. David's hands shook with rage. This wasn't just trespassing, this was violation on a level that made his chest tight with fury. Sarah had died in a pool. Not this one, but the community pool where she'd suffered a seizure while swimming laps, where the lifeguard had been on a smoke break, where the emergency equipment had been broken for weeks. He pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, grabbed his keys, and headed for the back door. The security system beeped as he disarmed it, and he made sure to move quietly. His plan was simple: confront Karen, get her out, and document everything for the inevitable legal battle. But as he stepped onto the back patio, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, a deep, rumbling bellow that could only come from one source. Humphrey. David's head snapped toward the side yard where he kept his rescue camel penned. The gate was wide open, swinging in the night breeze. Humphrey, all 800 pounds of him, was nowhere to be seen. "Oh shit," David whispered. Karen had gone completely still in the pool, her eyes wide with confusion. "What was that?" she called out, apparently forgetting she was trespassing. David opened his mouth to respond when Humphrey appeared around the corner of the house, his massive form silhouetted against the security lights. The camel's head swiveled toward the pool, and his ears went forward in the aggressive posture David had learned to recognize. "Karen," David said carefully, "I need you to get out of the pool very slowly and move toward the house." "Excuse me." Karen's voice climbed an octave. "This is my pool time." "I reserved it." "Reserved it." David stared at her. "This is my backyard." "You're trespassing." "Trespassing." Karen laughed, a sharp sound that made Humphrey's ears flatten. "I have every right to be here. I've been using this pool for months while you were too drunk to notice." The words hit David like a physical blow. He hadn't been drunk, he'd been grieving, working through his pain in therapy, trying to rebuild his life. But the accusation stung because there had been dark months after Sarah's death when he'd barely been functional. "You need to leave," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Now." "Or what?" Karen stood up in the pool, water cascading from her body. "You'll call the cops?" "Good luck with that, considering they know all about your little breakdown." Humphrey took a step closer to the pool, his massive head lowering. David had rescued the camel from a bankrupt petting zoo 2 years ago, and while Humphrey was generally gentle, he was also fiercely protective of his territory. "Karen, please," David said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Just get out slowly. Humphrey doesn't like sudden movements." "Humphrey." Karen looked around wildly until she spotted the camel. Her face went white. Is that a fucking camel? Yes, and you can't have a camel in a residential neighborhood. Karen's voice rose to a shriek. This violates at least 12 city ordinances. Humphrey bellowed again, louder this time, and began moving toward the pool with surprising speed for such a large animal. David had seen this behavior before. The camel was treating Karen as an intruder in his territory. Karen, get out of the pool now. But instead of complying, Karen did the worst possible thing. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, while thrashing in the water, creating exactly the kind of chaotic disturbance that would trigger Humphrey's protective instincts. Help! Help! There's a wild animal! Someone call animal control! Lights began flicking on in neighboring houses. David could hear doors opening, voices calling out. The situation was spiraling out of control. Humphrey reached the pool's edge and dipped his massive head toward the water, studying this noisy intruder. Karen scrambled toward the far end of the pool, still screaming, her movements creating waves that lapped against the camel's face. Stay back, she yelled at Humphrey, grabbing a pool skimmer and waving it threateningly. I know my rights. David moved carefully toward Humphrey, speaking in the calm, low voice he'd learned to use. Easy, boy. Easy. She's not supposed to be here, but we don't need to hurt her. Hurt me? Karen's voice cracked. I'm calling the police, animal control, the health department, and my lawyer. This is assault with a deadly weapon. It's not assault, David said through gritted teeth. It's trespassing. You broke into my yard. I did not break in. I have permission. Permission from who? Karen's eyes darted away from his, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Oh. I don't have to explain myself to you. Humphrey had gone still, his attention focused entirely on Karen. David recognized the signs. The camel was about to do something. In the wild, camels were known for their ability to hold grudges and exact revenge on those who wronged them. Humphrey might be domesticated, but he still had those instincts. Karen, I'm going to count to 3, David said. If you're not out of that pool by then, I'm not responsible for what happens next. You're threatening me. 1. This is illegal. You can't threaten someone with an animal. 2. Karen looked at Humphrey, who had positioned himself between her and the pool steps. His dark eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her voice falter. Oh. I have video. Evidence of you neglecting this animal. I've been documenting everything. 3. Humphrey moved faster than David had ever seen him move. The camel stepped into the shallow end of the pool with a tremendous splash, water cascading over his sides. Karen screamed and tried to swim away, but Humphrey was already wading deeper, his powerful legs churning through the water. Get it away from me! Karen shrieked. But Humphrey wasn't trying to hurt her. Instead, he positioned himself between Karen and the pool steps, effectively trapping her in the deep end. Then, with deliberate precision, he began to drink from the pool. What is he doing? Karen's voice was now more confused than terrified. David couldn't help but smile. He's claiming the water. In camel culture, controlling the water source means controlling the territory. That's insane. Tell that to Humphrey. The camel continued drinking, his massive tongue lapping at the chlorinated water while keeping one eye on Karen. She was treading water in the deep end, unable to get past him to the steps. This is kidnapping, she yelled. False imprisonment. Actually, David said, pulling out his phone, it's trespassing, breaking and entering, and public indecency. And I have it all on video. Karen's face went pale. You can't record me without consent. In my own backyard. After you broke in. Watch me. David started recording, making sure to capture Karen's face clearly. But as he lifted the phone, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Karen wasn't just randomly trespassing. On the patio table, next to a wine and cheese, was a thick manila folder. Even from a distance, he could see Sarah's name written on the tab. What's in the folder, Karen? Her eyes followed his gaze, and her expression shifted from panic to something that looked almost like guilt. I don't know what you're talking about. The folder with my dead wife's name on it. The one you brought to your little pool party. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not. David moved toward the table, his heart pounding. The folder was thick, filled with documents, photographs, and what looked like official reports. He flipped it open, and the first thing he saw was a police report from the night Sarah died. But it wasn't the report he'd been given. This one had additional pages, witness statements he'd never seen, and a different conclusion about the circumstances of Sarah's death. The official cause was listed as accidental drowning due to seizure, but handwritten notes in the margin. The police sirens grew louder, their wailing cutting through the night air like accusatory fingers. David's hands tightened on the manila folder as he watched Karen treading water in the deep end, her face a mask of terror and guilt. Humphrey remained motionless on the pool deck, a furry mountain of judgment blocking any escape route. David, Karen's voice cracked. You have to get me out of here before they arrive. If they find me like this, or like what? David's voice was arctic. Naked. Trespassing. In possession of stolen documents about my dead wife. They are not stolen. I told you I have a source. Who? David stepped closer to the pool's edge. Who gave you these files, Karen? And don't lie to me again. The sirens were getting closer. David could see the flash of red and blue lights reflecting off the trees at the end of his street. Maybe 2 minutes before they arrived. Michelle Torres, Karen blurted out. She works in the city attorney's office. She's been helping me build a case. David's blood turned to ice. He knew that name. Michelle Torres had been the assistant city attorney who'd handled the legal aftermath of Sarah's death. She'd been the one to tell him that the city wasn't liable, that the broken emergency equipment was a maintenance oversight, not negligence. Michelle Torres told me there was nothing suspicious about my wife's death, David said slowly. She said the investigation was thorough. She lied. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. She's been covering it up from the beginning. Why? Because she was there that night. At the pool. David's legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the pool ladder for support, his mind reeling. What do you mean she was there? She was the one having the affair with the lifeguard. Not Tom and Michelle. My husband was just the go-between. The world tilted on its axis. David stared at Karen, trying to process what she was saying. Your husband was helping Michelle Torres have an affair with the lifeguard. Tom runs the pool maintenance company. He has keys to everything, the equipment room, the chemical storage, the lifeguard station. Michelle asked him to arrange meetings with Derek, that's the lifeguard's name, and Tom thought he was just helping a friend. But you knew better. Karen's eyes filled with tears. I followed him one night. I saw them together, Michelle and Derek. And I saw Tom leaving the area right before your wife. The sirens were on his street now. David could hear car doors slamming, voices calling out. But he couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the magnitude of what Karen was telling him. You're saying the assistant city attorney was having an affair with the lifeguard, and she covered up the circumstances of Sarah's death to protect herself? Yes. Karen's voice was small. And I've been trying to gather enough evidence to prove it. By stalking me and breaking into my house. By trying to find a way to get justice for your wife. David wanted to scream, to rage, to let the fury consume him. But the sound of footsteps approaching his backyard gate forced him to focus on the immediate crisis. Mr. Chen. This is the police. We received reports of a disturbance. David looked at Karen, floating naked in his pool, trapped by a camel while holding evidence of a potential conspiracy. Then he looked at Humphrey, who was watching the approaching officers with keen interest. Karen, he said quietly, if you're lying to me about any of this, I will make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your life. I'm not lying, she whispered. I swear on my children's lives, I'm not lying. Mr. Chen. The voice was closer. Now. Are you back there? David made a split-second decision. He grabbed a pull towel from a nearby chair and threw it to Karen. "Put this on. When they get here, you were swimming with permission. You're a friend who came over to talk. Nothing more. Why are you helping me? Because if what you're saying is true, then we both want the same thing." David's voice was grim. "Justice for Sarah." The back gate opened and 2 police officers entered the yard, their hands resting on their service weapons. David recognized them both, Officer Martinez, no relation to Karen, and Officer Thompson. He'd worked with both of them during his time on the force. "Evening, David," Martinez said, his tone carefully neutral. "We got reports of screaming and some kind of animal disturbance." "Animal disturbance?" David gestured to Humphrey, who was still sitting placidly by the pool. "You mean Humphrey? He's perfectly legal. I have all the permits." Thompson's eyes widened as he took in the massive camel. "Jesus Christ, David. When did you get a camel?" 2 years ago. He's a rescue from the Peterson Petting Zoo when they went bankrupt." "And the screaming?" David looked at Karen, who was now wrapped in the towel and standing in the shallow end of the pool. Karen was startled when Humphrey came out to investigate. "She's not used to large animals." "Mrs. Martinez," Officer Martinez said, recognizing her. "What are you doing here at 4 in the morning?" Karen's eyes darted to David, then back to the officers. "Oh. I couldn't sleep. I was walking by and saw David sitting by the pool. We got to talking about Sarah. I mentioned how much I missed swimming, and he offered to let me use the pool. It was a thin story, but plausible enough." Officer Martinez made notes while Thompson continued to stare at Humphrey. "Is that thing dangerous?" Thompson asked. "Only if you threaten his territory," David said. "He's very protective of the water." As if to demonstrate, Humphrey rose to his feet and moved to the pool's edge, dipping his head to drink again. Both officers stepped back instinctively. "Look, David," Martinez said, "I know you've been through a lot, but maybe keeping a camel in a residential neighborhood isn't the best idea." "I have all the proper permits," David repeated. "Check with the city if you want." "We will," Martinez said. "But right now, we need to respond to the disturbance report." "Are you planning to keep swimming, Mrs. Martinez?" "Actually," Karen said, "I was just about to head home. This has been enlightening." She moved toward the pool steps, but Humphrey immediately positioned himself to block her path. The camel's eyes fixed on her with unmistakable intent. "He's not letting her leave," Thompson observed. "Humphrey," David said firmly, "it's okay. Let her pass." But the camel didn't move. Instead, he lowered his head and made a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "What's he doing?" Martinez asked. David had seen this behavior before, but never this intense. He's claiming her. In camel social structure, if someone enters your territory and drinks your water, they become part of your herd. "What does that mean?" "It means he thinks Karen belongs to him now." "That's ridiculous," Karen said, but her voice was shaky. "I'm not part of his herd." Humphrey disagreed. The camel moved closer to her, his massive bulk creating an effective barrier between Karen and the officers. "This is insane," Thompson muttered. "Can't you just order him to move?" "I can try," David said. "But camels are incredibly stubborn. Once they've made up their minds about something," he approached Humphrey slowly, speaking in the calm, low voice the camel responded to. "Easy, boy. Karen needs to go home now. She can come back and visit later." Humphrey's ears flattened and he made another rumbling sound. David recognized the signs. The camel was becoming agitated. "Maybe we should call animal control," Martinez suggested. "No," David said quickly. "That would traumatize him. He's a rescue animal with abandonment issues." "Then what do you suggest?" David looked at Karen, who was pressed against the pool wall, clearly terrified but trying to maintain her composure. An idea began to form in his mind, a way to use this bizarre situation to his advantage. "Humphrey has bonded with Karen," he said. "In the wild, camels form lifelong attachments to their herd members. If she leaves now, he might become depressed. Or aggressive. Are you saying she can't leave? Thompson asked. I'm saying she shouldn't leave. At least not until Humphrey adjusts to her presence. Karen's eyes widened as she realized what David was doing. I have to get home. My family will be worried. Your family is out of town, David said smoothly. You mentioned that earlier. They are visiting your sister in Phoenix. It was a gamble, but Karen's expression confirmed he'd guessed correctly. This is highly irregular, Martinez said. We can't just leave a citizen trapped by a camel. She's not trapped, David said. She's adopted. There's a difference. I don't understand the difference. Trapped would be against her will. Adopted means she's accepted the responsibility of herd membership. David looked directly at Karen as he said this, his meaning clear. If she wanted access to the information that could expose the truth about Sarah's death, she would have to play along. Oh. I suppose I could stay for a while, Karen said reluctantly. Until the animal adjusts. See? David smiled at the officers. Problem solved. Martinez looked skeptical. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Martinez? I'm sure, Karen said, though. Her voice lacked conviction. And you're okay with this arrangement, David? Thompson asked. Absolutely. Karen and I have a lot to discuss about Sarah. This will give us time to work through some things. The officers exchanged glances. This was clearly outside their normal experience, but neither the camel nor its owner appeared to be breaking any laws. All right, Martinez said finally. But if there are any more disturbances, we are calling animal control regardless of the psychological impact. Understood, David said. After the officers left, David and Karen stood in awkward silence beside the pool. Humphrey had settled back into his guardian position, effect. Michelle Torres stood on David's front porch like a predator assessing its prey. She was smaller than David remembered, petite, with carefully styled auburn hair and the kind of sharp business suit that screamed authority. But her eyes held a cold intelligence that made his skin crawl. David, she said, her voice smooth as silk. You look terrible. Are you sleeping? Cut the bullshit, Michelle. I know what you did. Her expression didn't change, but David caught the slightest tightening around her eyes. What I did? I helped your family through a very difficult time. I made sure the city's legal obligations were met with compassion. You killed my wife. That's a very serious accusation. Michelle's tone remained level, professional. I hope you have evidence to support such a claim. David stepped back, allowing her to enter. Come in. Let's discuss the evidence. Michelle hesitated for a moment, then crossed the threshold. David closed the door behind her, noting that she'd parked her black BMW at the curb with the engine running. Planning for a quick escape. Nice house, Michelle said, looking around. Sarah always talked about how proud she was of this place. Don't. David's voice was sharp. Don't you dare say her name. She was my friend, David. We worked together for 3 years. I cared about her. You cared about her so much that you replaced her seizure medication with sugar pills. Michelle's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of something that might have been surprise or fear. I don't know what you're talking about. The toxicology report. The one that wasn't in the file you gave me. The one that shows she had no anti-seizure medication in her system when she died. Toxicology reports can be unreliable. Lab errors happen all the time. David led her through the house toward the back patio where Karen was waiting with the evidence folder. Lab errors. Equipment malfunctions. Negligent lifeguards. You have an excuse for everything, don't you? I have explanations for tragic coincidences. They stepped onto the patio and Michelle stopped short when she saw Karen standing by the pool, still wrapped in the towel. Humphrey was positioned between them and the pool, his massive form alert and watchful. Karen, Michelle said, her voice taking on a different tone. I was hoping you'd be here. Were you? Karen's voice was steady, but David could see her hands shaking. And why is that? Because you've been asking questions. Dangerous questions. Questions that could hurt innocent people. Innocent people? Karen laughed bitterly. Like Sarah Chen. Was she innocent when you murdered her? Michelle's composure cracked slightly. I didn't murder anyone. Sarah died of natural causes. Natural causes? David pulled out the fraudulent insurance policy. Natural causes that happened to occur right after you took out $1 million life insurance policy on her. Michelle's eyes fixed on the document. And for the first time, David saw genuine fear in her expression. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The question is why you forged my wife's signature on a policy that names the city as beneficiary. I didn't forge anything. The handwriting analysis will prove otherwise, Karen said. I've already had it examined by 3 different experts. Michelle's gaze shifted between them, calculating. You two have been busy. But you're playing with fire. There are things you don't understand. Enlighten us, David said. Michelle walked closer to the pool, her heels clicking on the concrete. Humphrey's ears went back, and he made a low rumbling sound. Careful, David warned. He doesn't like sudden movements. I'm not afraid of your pet. Michelle's voice was dismissive, but she stopped moving. David, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. But Sarah wasn't the innocent victim you think she was. Don't. David's voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare try to blame her for what you did. I'm not blaming her. I'm explaining why she had to die. The words hung in the air like a curse. Michelle had just confessed to murder, and she didn't even seem to realize it. You just admitted it, Karen said, her voice amazed. You just said she had to die. Michelle's eyes widened as she realized her mistake. That's not. I didn't mean you meant exactly what you said. David pulled out his phone. Anna recorded every word. Michelle's face went white. You can't use that in court. You didn't inform me I was being recorded. I don't need to inform you of anything. This is my house and you're trespassing. I'm here at your invitation. Actually, David said, you're here because you threatened me. That text message you sent. That's evidence of stalking and intimidation. Michelle's composure was completely gone now. You don't understand what you're doing. There are people involved in this who will destroy you if you don't stop. What people? People with power. People who can make your life very difficult. More difficult than losing my wife to a murderer. Michelle looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape route. But Humphrey had positioned himself to block the path back to the house, and the pool fence was too high to climb. I want to make a deal, she said finally. What kind of deal? I'll tell you everything. The whole truth about that night. But you have to promise me immunity. I can't promise you immunity. I'm not a prosecutor. Then get me a prosecutor who will. David looked at Karen, who shook her head. She's trying to buy time, Karen said. Probably hoping backup will arrive. Backup? David's blood ran cold. What backup? Michelle smiled for the first time since arriving. Did you really think I came here alone? Did you think I would walk into a trap without protection? As if summoned by her words, David heard the sound of car doors slamming in front of his house. Multiple car doors. Who did you bring? He demanded. Insurance, Michelle said. The kind of insurance that ensures problems disappear permanently. David's mind raced. If Michelle had brought hired muscle, they were trapped. The backyard was enclosed, and Humphrey's presence meant they couldn't move quickly. David, Karen's voice was urgent. We need to call the police. Now. The police won't help you, Michelle said. Half the department is on my payroll. The other half owes me favors. You're lying. Am I? How do you think I covered up Sarah's murder for 3 years? How do you think I manipulated the investigation? I have friends in very high places. David heard footsteps approaching the back gate. Heavy footsteps that suggested multiple people. His heart pounded as he realized they were about to be outnumbered. "Karen," he said quietly, "get behind Humphrey." "What?" "Trust me. Get behind Humphrey. Now." Karen moved toward the camel, who seemed to sense the approaching danger. Humphrey rose to his full height, his massive form creating an imposing barrier. Between them and the gate opened, and 3 men entered the backyard. They were dressed in dark clothing and moved with the practiced efficiency of professionals. David recognized the type, mercenaries, probably ex-military, the kind of men who asked no questions and left no witnesses. "Mrs. Torres," the lead man said, his voice flat and emotionless. "We are here to clean up your problem." "Good," Michelle said, her confidence returning. "Make it look like an accident. A tragic case of someone being attacked by a dangerous animal." David's blood turned to ice. She was going to have them killed and frame Humphrey for it. "You're insane," he said. "You can't murder 3 people and expect to get away with it." "3 people?" Michelle laughed. "I only see 2. Karen Martinez is about to have a tragic accident while trespassing in your backyard. And you're about to die heroically trying to save her from your out-of-control camel. And the 3rd person? The 3rd person is going to disappear entirely. After all, who's going to miss a delusional ex-cop who's been drinking himself to death since his wife died?" David felt rage building in his chest. "You've thought of everything. I've had 3 years to plan for this contingency. I knew eventually someone would start asking questions. I just didn't expect it to be Karen." The lead mercenary stepped forward. We need to move quickly. Neighbors might have seen us arrive." "Of course." Michelle's voice was businesslike. "David, I want you to know that I take no pleasure in this. But you forced my hand." "Wait," Karen said suddenly. "Before you kill us, I want to know something. Why did you really kill Sarah?" Michelle paused, clearly debating whether to answer. "Because she was going to destroy everything I'd built. Do you have any idea how much money flows through the recreation department? How many opportunities there are for someone with vision?" "You mean embezzlement?" "I mean entrepreneurship." Sarah was too small-minded to understand the bigger picture. The bigger picture of stealing from taxpayers. The bigger picture of taking advantage of systematic inefficiencies to create wealth. Sarah saw corruption. I saw opportunity. David stared at her in amazement. "You killed my wife over money." "I killed your wife to protect a network that generates millions of dollars in revenue. Revenue that supports dozens of families, creates jobs, stimulates the local economy. By stealing from the city budget. By redirecting underutilized resources toward more productive uses." David had heard enough. "Karen, when I give the signal, run toward the house." "What signal?" "You'll know it when you hear it." David approached. Humphrey slowly, speaking in the low, calm voice the camel responded to. "Humphrey, these people want to hurt us. They want to take away our territory." The camel's ears went back, and he made a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from his chest. "They want to take away our water," David continued. "Our home. Our herd." "Humphrey." Agent Rodriguez led David and Karen into the house while crime scene technicians swarmed the backyard. Humphrey had been coaxed back to his pen with a bucket of fresh water and several apples, though he kept one eye on the proceedings, as if personally invested in the outcome. "Before we begin," Agent Rodriguez said, settling into David's living room, "I need you both to understand that what I'm about to tell you is classified. It's part of an ongoing federal investigation that spans multiple states and involves dozens of suspects." David's stomach clenched. "How big is this thing?" "Bigger than municipal embezzlement. Bigger than insurance fraud. Sarah's murder was just the tip of the iceberg." Karen leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Agent Rodriguez opened a tablet and pulled up a complex organizational chart. "For the past 18 months, we've been investigating a network of corrupt officials operating in 12 cities across the Southwest. They've been systematically looting public funds, manipulating insurance policies, and eliminating anyone who threatens to expose them. Eliminating. David's voice was barely a whisper. 23 suspicious deaths in the past 5 years. All ruled accidental or natural causes. All involving people who had access to financial records that could expose the conspiracy. David stared at the chart, trying to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. You're saying Sarah wasn't the only one? Sarah was victim number 18. There have been 5 more since then. Karen's face had gone white. Oh my God. What have we stumbled into? A criminal enterprise that's stolen over $200 million from taxpayers. Agent Rodriguez swiped to another screen showing financial flow charts. The money flows through shell companies, offshore accounts, and legitimate businesses that serve as fronts. Who's running it? That's where it gets complicated. Rodriguez hesitated, then made a decision. The operation is overseen by someone. We've codenamed the architect. We know he exists, we know he's brilliant, and we know he's completely ruthless. But we don't know his identity. How does Michelle Torres fit in? She's middle management. A regional coordinator who reports to someone higher up the chain. But she's also our best chance of identifying the architect. David felt a chill run down his spine. Is she going to cooperate? She doesn't have a choice. We have enough evidence to put her away for multiple life sentences. But we are offering her a deal if she gives us the architect. What kind of deal? 25 to life instead of death row. Karen gasped. Death row? 3 of the murders involved federal officials. That makes it a capital case. David tried to wrap his mind around it all. So Sarah died because she accidentally stumbled across part of a massive conspiracy. Not exactly. Agent Rodriguez's expression grew even more serious. Sarah didn't stumble across anything. She was specifically targeted. What do you mean? Your wife wasn't just an accountant who noticed irregularities. She was a federal informant. The words hit David like a sledgehammer. He stared at Agent Rodriguez, certain he'd misheard. That's impossible. She'd been working with us for 8 months before her death. Sarah contacted the FBI when she first discovered the embezzlement. We asked her to continue working while gathering evidence. No. David shook his head violently. Sarah would have told me. We didn't keep secrets from each other. She wanted to tell you. But we convinced her that keeping you in the dark was the safest option for both of you. David felt like the world was collapsing around him. Everything he thought he knew about his wife, about their marriage, about the last months of her life, was a lie. You got her killed, he said, his voice raw with emotion. You put her in danger and got her killed. We tried to protect her. We had protocols in place, your protocols failed. David lunged to his feet, rage overwhelming him. Your protocols got my wife murdered. David, Karen said softly, sit down. Let her explain. Explain what? How the FBI used my wife as bait and then let her die. Agent Rodriguez remained calm in the face of his fury. Sarah knew the risks. She chose to continue the investigation because she believed in what we were doing. She believed in justice. David said bitterly. And look where it got her. Her work has saved lives. The evidence she gathered has led to the arrests of dozens of corrupt officials. Without her sacrifice, don't. David's voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare call it a sacrifice. She was murdered because you failed to protect her. Agent Rodriguez nodded. You're right. We failed. And I've been living with that failure for 3 years. Good. I hope it keeps you awake at night. It does. The simple honesty in her voice deflated some of David's rage. He sank back into his chair, feeling emotionally drained. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because we need your help. My help? Michelle Torres is going to lawyer up. She's going to claim she was just following orders, that she didn't know the full scope of the conspiracy. Without her cooperation. The architect will disappear and this whole investigation will collapse. What does that have to do with me? You have something she wants. Which is? Agent Rodriguez gestured toward the backyard where Humphrey was visible through the window. Leverage. David stared at her. You want me to use my camel to intimidate a federal prisoner? I want you to visit Michelle in custody and convince her that cooperating is in her best interest. Why would she listen to me? Because you're the grieving widower she wronged. Because you have the moral authority to offer forgiveness in exchange for justice. I don't forgive her. You don't have to mean it. You just have to say it convincingly enough that she believes cooperating will earn her redemption. David looked at Karen, who had been quiet during the exchange. What do you think? I think, Karen said slowly, that if there's a chance to stop this from happening to other families, we have to take it. Even if it means lying to Michelle. Especially if it means lying to Michelle. She lied to you for 3 years. She murdered your wife. She doesn't deserve honesty. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. There's something else. Something that might change your mind about helping us. What? We have reason to believe the architect has identified you as a threat. Your investigation. Tonight, your cooperation with Karen, the arrest of Michelle, all of it has been reported up the chain. David's blood ran cold. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying that the architect has a history of eliminating problems before they become bigger problems. You mean he's going to try to kill me? We are going to protect you. But the best protection is to shut down the entire network before he can act. David stood and walked to the window, looking out at Humphrey. The camel was lying peacefully in his pen, apparently unconcerned about the federal investigation swirling around him. If I do this, David said, if I help you get Michelle to cooperate, what happens to her? She serves a sentence. 25. To life, assuming she gives us what we need. And if she doesn't? Death row. David turned back to Agent Rodriguez. When do we start? Tomorrow morning. We'll arrange for you to visit her at the federal holding facility. What do I say to her? Whatever it takes to make her believe that cooperating is the only way to save her soul. Karen stood and joined David at the window. Are you sure about this? No, David said. But Sarah died trying to expose these people. If I can help finish what she started, then maybe her death will have meant something. Agent Rodriguez gathered her files. There's one more thing you should know. About Sarah's final months. What about them? She was scared. Terrified, actually. She knew she was in danger, but she refused to back down. She said she couldn't live with herself if she let these people continue stealing from families who depended on city services. David felt tears burning his eyes. That sounds like Sarah. She talked about you constantly. About how proud she was of your police work, about how much she loved the life you'd built together. She was determined to clean up the corruption so you could both live without fear. Instead, she died because of it. She died fighting for what was right. Just like you are now. After Agent Rodriguez left, David and Karen sat in silence on the couch, processing everything they'd learned. Outside, Humphrey had risen and was pacing the perimeter of his pen, as if sensing their emotional turmoil. I keep thinking about the last conversation I had with Sarah, David said finally. She seemed distracted, worried about something. I asked her what was wrong, and she said it was just work stress. She was protecting you. She was lying to me. She was protecting you, Karen repeated firmly. There's a difference. Is there? How many other lies did she tell me? How many other secrets was she keeping? David, listen to me. Karen turned to face him. I've spent months investigating Sarah's death. I've read her emails, her phone records, her financial statements. Everything I found showed a woman who was desperately trying to do the right thing while keeping the man she loved safe. You don't know that. I know that she withdrew $5,000 from your savings account 2 weeks before she died. David frowned. I never knew about that. She used it to hire a private investigator to watch your house while she was working late. She was so afraid that the conspiracy would target you that she spent your money to keep you safe. David stared at her. How do you know this? Because I found the private investigator. His name is Marcus Webb. He's been keeping an eye on you for 3 years, making sure nobody. The federal holding facility looked like a fortress of concrete and steel rising from the desert outside Phoenix. David sat in the passenger seat of Agent Rodriguez's unmarked sedan, watching guards move with military precision behind razor wire fences. Remember, Rodriguez said, you're here as a grieving widower seeking closure. Michelle believes this is an unofficial visit, a chance for you to hear her side of the story before she's formally sentenced. And she doesn't know I'm working with you. She thinks you are here against our wishes. That you somehow convinced the facility administrator to grant you a compassionate visit. David checked his watch. 9:47 a.m. Exactly 12 hours since Humphrey had taken down Michelle's mercenaries. It felt like a lifetime. What if she doesn't buy it? Then we proceed with the death penalty case and hope we can identify the architect through other means. How many more people die while we are hoping? Rodriguez's expression was grim. That's why this has to work. They were escorted through multiple security checkpoints before reaching the visitor's room, a sterile space with cameras in every corner and a thick plate of bulletproof glass separating visitors from inmates. Michelle Torres sat on the other side, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her look smaller and more vulnerable than she had the night before. David, she said as he picked up the phone. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure I would either. How are you holding up? David studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. How do you think I'm holding up, Michelle? I just learned that my wife was murdered by someone I trusted. I know you hate me. I know you want me to burn in hell for what I did. You're right. I do. Michelle's composure cracked slightly. But you came anyway. Why? Because I need to understand. I need to know why Sarah had to die. I told you last night you told me about embezzlement and corruption. But there's more, isn't there? The FBI thinks you're part of something much bigger. Michelle's eyes darted to the cameras, then back to David. I can't talk about that here. Why not? Because there are people who will kill me if I say too much. People like the architect. Michelle went white. How do you know that name? I know a lot of things, Michelle. I know about the 23 victims. I know about the $200 million. I know that Sarah was working undercover for the FBI. That's impossible. Sarah wasn't. Michelle stopped herself, realization dawning. They got to you. The feds got to you. Nobody got to me. I got to them. After what happened last night, I wanted answers. And they offered you a deal. They offered me justice. Michelle laughed bitterly. Justice? Is that what they are calling it? David, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Then enlighten me. Michelle looked around the visitor's room, her paranoia evident. Not here. Too many eyes, too many ears. Then. Where? There's only one place we can talk freely. And you're not going to like it. Where, Michelle? The place where Sarah died. David felt ice in his veins. The community pool. Tonight. Midnight. Come alone and I'll tell you everything you want to know about the architect. How are you going to be there? You're in federal custody. Michelle smiled, a cold, calculating expression that made David's skin crawl. Because the architect doesn't abandon his people. He's going to arrange my release. That's impossible. Is it? How do you think I've avoided prosecution for 3 years? How do you think the conspiracy has operated without detection? The architect has people everywhere, David. In the FBI, in the courts, in the prosecutor's office. David felt the ground shifting beneath him. You're saying the fix is in. I'm saying that by tonight, I'll be a free woman. And you'll have one chance to hear the truth before the architect decides you're too dangerous to live. What truth? The truth about who really killed your wife. And why. The line went dead. Michelle had hung up the phone and was being led away by guards, leaving David staring at his reflection in the bulletproof glass. Agent Rodriguez was waiting in the hallway, her expression tense. How did it go? She wants to meet tonight. At the community pool where Sarah died. That's not happening. It's obviously a trap. She says the architect is going to arrange her release. Rodriguez's face went pale. That's impossible. We have her in maximum security. She seemed pretty confident. Even if he could arrange something like that, why would he risk exposing himself to free one operative? Because she knows who he is. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. If that's true, then Michelle Torres isn't just middle management. She's his inside connection to the federal investigation. What does that mean? It means we've been compromised from the beginning. It means the architect has been watching our every move. David felt sick. How long? Probably since Sarah first contacted us. Maybe longer. So her death was inevitable. No, Rodriguez said firmly. Her death was preventable. We just didn't know we were fighting a war on two fronts. They walked in silence toward the exit, David's mind racing. If the FBI had been compromised, then everyone involved in the investigation was in danger, including Karen. I need to call Karen, he said, pulling out his phone. Already taken care of. She's in protective custody at a safe house outside the city. What about Humphrey? Your Camel is under federal protection. We have agents watching your property. David almost smiled despite the circumstances. Humphrey's going to love that. He doesn't like strangers in his territory. We briefed the agents on proper camel etiquette. There's no such thing as proper camel etiquette. Humphrey makes his own rules. They reached Rodriguez's car, but before they could get in, her phone buzzed with an urgent alert. She read the message and her face went ashen. What is it? Michelle Torres escaped from federal custody 20 minutes ago. How is that possible? Someone with federal credentials signed transfer orders moving her to a different facility. By the time anyone realized the paperwork was forged, she was gone. David stared at the prison complex, trying to process what had happened. The architect. The architect. So she'll be at the pool tonight. And so will he. This is his endgame, David. He's going to eliminate everyone who can connect him to the conspiracy. Including me. Including you. David got into the car, his mind already working on a plan. Then we give him what he wants. What do you mean? We go to the pool. Tonight. But not alone. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to finish what Sarah started. Rodriguez started the engine. It's too dangerous. We don't know how many people he'll bring, what kind of resources he has access to. But we know something he doesn't. What's that? We know about Humphrey. Rodriguez looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. You want to bring your camel to a showdown with the architect. I want to bring my secret weapon. The community pool looked different at midnight. The cheerful blue tiles and colorful lane markers that David remembered from daylight visits were transformed into something darker, more ominous under the harsh security lighting. This was where Sarah had died, where she'd fought her final battle against seizure and suffocation while the people who should have saved her were too busy with their own agenda. David crouched behind a maintenance building 50 yards from the pool entrance, watching for signs of movement. Agent Rodriguez and a tactical team were positioned around the perimeter, invisible but ready to move on his signal, and behind him, Humphrey waited with the patience of a desert predator. You ready for this, boy? David whispered. Humphrey's ears twitched, but he remained motionless. David had trained him for this moment, using the same techniques he'd learned as AK-9 handler years ago. Camels, he'd discovered, were remarkably intelligent and surprisingly good at following complex instructions. At 12:17 a.m., a black sedan pulled into the pool parking lot. Michelle Torres got out first, followed by two men in expensive suits. Then came a third figure, tall, silver-haired, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to power, the architect. David activated the microphone hidden in his shirt collar. Target acquired. 3+1 unknown subject. Copy that, Rodriguez's voice whispered in his earpiece. We have eyes on all subjects. David watched as the group approached the pool gate. Michelle had a key, of course she did. They entered the facility and walked to the edge of the water where Sarah had died. David Chen. The silver-haired man's voice carried across the water. I know you're here. Come out, and let's finish this like civilized people. David stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. I'm here. Excellent. I'm Jonathan Whitmore, though you know me by another name.